Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am Councillor Kimberly Barrett, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Environment. For today's meeting, just the usual housekeeping safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. We will assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Please, can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you've finished, otherwise the camera will remain on you as well as on the big screen up here. So we'll start with introductions. I will start this side this time, so I'll start with Russell.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hillsey Ward.
Councillor Charlotte Gerarda, Central Southsea Ward.
Christina Downey, Climate Change Officer.
Jane Didino, a Local Democracy Officer.
Zoe White, Green and Healthy City Coordinator.
Andrew Waggett, Head of Energy Services.
Antonia Craig, Graduate Energy Officer.
Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director of Buildings.
And James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Any apologies for absences at all? No? Okay. Any declarations of interest for anybody at all today? No? No, all good. Okay, then we will move straight on to item 3, the Warmer Homes Project update. So I'll pass over to Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. This paper highlights the Warmer Homes Project, which has been running in Portsmouth now for the best part of 18 months or more. And this is just to bring a latest update and build on the paper that we brought this time last year to this, actually to Cabinet, to describe what was going on within the Warmer Homes paper. And it comes off the back of wrapping up the LAD 1B phase of the project, so the first phase of the LADS project, which I'll go on to explain what that is actually, thinking about. So I'll just go through the quick purpose of the paper. So the purpose of the paper is to just bring information about the Warm Homes paper, the Warm Homes project. This has been funded largely from funding from the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, or BEIS, and in essence it allows free measures to be installed on qualifying households for energy efficiency purposes or renewable reasons. So those measures tend to be solar PV, insulation of various types, including external wall insulation and solid wall insulation as a whole, which is quite a difficult thing to fund through other means, and also air source heat pumps. And I'll explain a little further about why air source heat pumps don't play a big role in this to date, but are going to play a much bigger role moving forward. So we detail the numbers of homes installed, which now stands at over 2,000, well over 2,000 households that have been installed across the Warm Homes Consortium area. It's worth saying that the Warm Homes project itself is a Portsmouth-led scheme, or PCC-led scheme, but it now incorporates 22 other local authorities within that consortium area. So the vast majority of Hampshire is now included, with I think one exception now. The Brighton and Hove and Southampton have come along in the latest iteration of the project. We're just adopting the Isle of Wight onto the project as well as all West Sussex authorities. So, with the paper itself includes an awful lot of detail about phase 1 of the project, which is coming to an end. We're detailing the latest progress in terms of the money spent. It's a live project, so in between writing this paper and coming here today, I know that another 30 odd properties have actually had an install. To show the contribution in terms of kind of monetary value into the local economy, we're committed to try and use low carbon skills in this project. So we're using a lot of local people within the supply chain. So identifying that the monetary value of it, the carbon value of it, i.e. the offset in terms of carbon emissions, and the energy savings as well as in Appendix A highlighting a few case studies as well, which are quite nice rather than sort of the quite dry data. We highlight lessons learned from the delivery of the process. So this is a continuous learning curve for us. We're constantly taking the lessons learned and applying them for what we do. And actually, you can see in terms of the kind of step between the LAD 1A phase of the project and the LAD 1B phase of the project, and fully allocating the funding, a much greater amount of funding, you're kind of showing that those lessons have been teased through. And then finally, just to the Cabinet member provides assurance that domestic energy retrofit is a priority area for the Council, particularly at a time of huge cost of living crisis brought about largely through the energy crisis. I'll talk a tiny bit about the body of the detail as well. So and probably just highlight really that we're just closing out the LAD 1B element of the funding. For anybody who's confused by the different acronyms and stages of this project, don't worry, so am I now. The table in 3.1.3 shows the values of the funding that have been won to date through various things, and it's worth saying that 1A and 1B now are closed, and we've just finished the closure letter went back to BASE yesterday, and we're now into the LAD 3 and HUG phase of the funding as well. So we have further funding bids with BASE as of last week as well to continue on the Warm Homes programme for a further 2 years beyond the 31st of March 23, which is the deadline as things stand right now. And then I suppose just to draw your attention, again, I said I wasn't going to focus on the dry stats, but I am, draw your attention to table in 3.2.6, which shows the total numbers of installs installed across the entire consortium area, and then how that's played out specifically within the Portsmouth political boundaries as well. Finally, if I may, just because I said I wouldn't focus on dry stuff, the Appendix A gives some really nice case studies relating to real people actually who've been helped through this process, and the benefits that they've seen through this process, where they've had these measures installed for free on their homes. And I'll be quiet now.
Thank you very much, Andrew. The report is really good. It shows exactly what we're doing, not just us, but the other cities around Hampshire as well. I will point towards 3.2.8, which shows that, I don't like to toot our horn too much, but, how much 3 times larger than the amount of projects that we've done are 3 times larger than the amount of the next closest authority, and I think that just shouts really loudly as to everything that we've been pushing forward with, and the good work that the Switched On team have been doing to help so many residents across the city, especially in the time that we are with the cost of living, the energy crisis as well. So it's really important, I think, and I think huge congratulations go to the energy team for pushing forward with all these measures. I did have a question though, with the LAD 1B funding, obviously with that coming to a close now, did we end up spending everything, or?
So I've got bad news. We didn't allocate £486 of the £14.8 million that we had to spend. So we were short by £480 odd pounds. But I joked yesterday to James that that'll be coming out of Antonia's salary. So not to worry.
Oh, that's a shame. Next time we'll have to add that on to the next lot. So, and just to add as well, I know that obviously you mentioned that we put in the bid for the next round, and do we know roughly when we might hear about that?
We understand that we'll hear in the early part of the new year, so in January probably. So the funding for is for the next round of the home upgrade grant, phase 2, so the HUG phase 2. Sorry, I'm conscious I didn't say what the different acronyms were. So LAD, when we're referring to it, is local authority delivery. HUG is home upgrade grant. So we've bid as of Friday lunchtime, which we understand was in quite a bit of time compared to some other local authorities. We've bid for £41.5 million. That will be for the next 2 years, 2 years from starting the 1st of April, the 1st of April 23. But that will treat properties which are off gas. So I mentioned the fact that there aren't many air source heat pump installs when you look at the total numbers under the LAD schemes, or largely funded through LAD schemes to date. That's because it's very difficult to actually make an energy efficient or an energy cost improvement, which is what an energy performance certificate would look at, by taking away a gas combi boiler, say for instance, and putting an air source heat pump in its place. However, as we move into the HUG phases of the schemes, where they're focused entirely on off-gas properties, it becomes a much easier proposition to get funding for, because we're taking out old storage heaters, we're taking out direct electric heaters in the worst cases, and we're replacing that with a much more efficient air source heat pump with an efficiency of sort of 300%, if you like, 3 times more efficient than a direct electric heating system. So that's what the £41.5 million that we've bid for is there to do.
Thank you very much. I don't know if any of you have got any questions at all. Charlotte?
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Agree, this is a really excellent report, and clearly a lot of people have really been positively impacted in Portsmouth at a time when it really matters most, so just huge thanks to you and the team. I did have just one question on 3.3.4. High heat retention storage heaters, it was 0 under LAD 3. Is that just because it wasn't available under that scheme?
Yeah, that's right. So the high heat retention storage heaters are purely for on-gas properties. So you will see, as time moves on, I know we've done some this week, and I can't remember whether or not they fitted within the time frame for putting this paper in. But you'll actually on the next table down on 3 across. I think we have actually got one property installed at that point as we go through it. They'll all be installed under the HUG programme rather than the LAD programme. So what we're reporting today is largely stuff that's been done under LAD in one guise or another, whether 1A, 1B or 3. As we move into the HUG programme, we'll be putting far more high retention storage heaters in. I would say that the high retention storage heaters are almost a secondary option to air source heat. So in an ideal scenario, we would be putting in an air source heat pump because they are 300 times more efficient, 300% more efficient, 3 times more efficient than high retention storage heaters or any other electric heating system. However, that is the perfect, and sometimes we have to do the good. So if we're treating a flat, then it's very difficult to find a place to put the heat pump element of the heat pump on the outside of the property. And so when we're doing flats in particular, or areas of conservation concern and things like that, often we're looking at high retention storage heaters as a good second best to an air source.
That's great, thank you for answering that. And then I just wanted to say, I just want to place my thanks formally to Andrew in particular, because he's soon to finish at the council, and he's just done amazing work for Portsmouth, and you're going to be missed. But good luck with your next steps.
Yeah, I'd like to. The same, really, to miss you, but also these schemes have been really good. I'm just curious about one thing, with the solar panels, because I know some of them are with batteries as well. Is that correct? Would I be right, or am I wrong on that?
No, if they are, the batteries have been installed off the resident or the customer's own back. We are thinking that when we come into they're not currently applicable to be delivered in the scheme. However, in summer of next year, we have SAP 10 will come in and replace the EPCs, the SAP version that drives EPCs at the moment. That includes some other measures and batteries and solar diverters, sort of iBoosts, the element that you put into a hot water tank. They're included within that. So within our HUG 2 bid, we've actually made reference to that in terms of the measures mix that we might do, but we are waiting for the latest iteration of the SAP software to be released, because placing a battery alongside a solar PV system, you increase the amount of in-house consumption, or the amount of benefit to the tenant and or resident by 50% compared to just a straightforward PV system.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just the last question I wanted to check in. Obviously, I know a lot of people come to me asking about the criteria and EPC side of things. I know that there have been a couple of discussions going back and forth between us and Bays to discuss that further. I don't know whether you'd be able to sort of talk a bit about that as well.
I will. We've been through a few different iterations now in terms of the qualifying criteria. So if I'm looking to my colleague on my left, I'm waiting for it to be nudged if I get this wrong. Any property which has a D-rated EPC or lower is applicable for the scheme. If that household has qualifying criteria which are £31,000 total household income, £20,000 after costs, housing costs to that household, or qualifying means tested benefits. Yeah. Am I missing anything? Okay, so that's the case now. But we've been working with Bays over a period of time to try and show more flexibility with their qualifying criteria. We were in an area, well, we're running a consortium scheme with some areas where it's very difficult to have some of those qualifying criteria and actually live in some areas of East Hampshire and Test Valley and Winchester. So we're trying to provide as broad a qualifying criteria as we possibly can for Bays, whilst making sure that we focus it on for your poor households.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't know if anyone's got any other comments or questions at all? No? Well, I will say I was going to leave it till the end, but yeah, no, I just want to place my thanks on record, to Andrew and his team. As it's been mentioned, you will be really missed, and this is his last meeting, so we couldn't not mention it here. But I just really want to say, I know you've been in the council for over 10 years, so you've really made an impact. So what you've done with the energy team, I hope you realise that you have left a legacy here that we will carry on for you. We hope you come back and visit us. We will make sure that all the trophies are displayed quite nicely, so you could come visit them and say hello. And we will carry on trying to sort of build on what you've done here. So I just, your new employer is very lucky. I'm very jealous that they've stolen you, but I just wanted to thank you because I know people have tried to poach you over the years and you've stayed with us. So, but look what you've done for the city. So just, I think for all of us here, we really want to say thank you. You've done an amazing job, and we know that you'll do more with your new employer. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
So after that, we will move on to the next item. So I will hand over to Zoe for the Woodland Accelerator Fund.
Thank you. Okay, so today's paper is for noting, and this is to update the Cabinet member on the detail of the Woodland Creation Accelerator Fund, including the 3 primary criteria, which was evidence of need, commitments to planting, and deliverability assessment. So the Woodland Creation Accelerator Fund was designed to provide financial support to increase the capacity of specialist skills within local authorities, which in turn would enable them to accelerate the delivery of tree planting and woodland creation commitments. And what DEFRA said was that they recognise that local authorities are struggling to plant not because they don't have the skills to do so, but because they don't have the staff to initiate the projects in the first place. So that was the reason for the grant. So authorities across England have identified tree and woodland planting as a key part of their response to climate change and the biodiversity crisis, and a lack of capacity to develop and design plant proposals, to consult widely and apply for capital grants and organise planting have been identified as the key barriers to progress. It's a revenue-only fund, which they explain to be a Section 31 fund, so there's no rules or grant rules around how that money is spent. It does need to be to deliver the additional numbers of tree planting, but we can spend those salary costs in any way that we think is suitable for Portsmouth. So with additional resource, there is scope to deliver, we think, 660 standard trees and 2,900 whips, and then next year 481 standards, we're talking 6 to 8 year olds, and another 16,000 sort of whips, which would increase the overall tree canopy by 14%, which is huge for the city. Planting estimates have been reached by discussing with our stakeholders what would be manageable if we had the resource to engage the community, to project manage and to help with funding opportunities and applications. So on the 10th of October, DEFRA notified us that the evaluation of applications was complete and Portsmouth City Council was successful with a funding award of £147,116 for a fixed-term 2-year recruitment of 2 full-time posts. The grant has been handed over to ADEPT, Association of Directors of Environment, Economy, Planting and Transport, to manage the funds, and we met with ADEPT yesterday to discuss how to move forward, and they have already released half the fund into the finance pot somewhere, so I have to go and find that today. But it has been released, we've got it, and the second half of the fund gets released in April. So we aim to recruit 2 posts supporting the work of the accelerated tree planting, one of which will be an engagement officer, which details were in Appendix B, and the other one is going to be a project officer, which details of which were in Appendix C. So the first post, engagement officer, has been approved by HR, and the second post needs a full JEQ written, which we're in the process of doing. So we hope to have both posts in place and recruited by March, beginning of March.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Zoe. I know when you told me that we'd received the funding for this, and I was quite excited for a number of reasons. Obviously, to have more officers working in this area to push forward with a number of projects, so not just planting, but community engagement, I think is very important going forward. But the chance that we could have additional tree canopy cover of 14% in the city is a huge, huge thing. We are an island city. We are very heavily concreted, this city, quite compacted in some areas as well. So to be able to deliver that, and not just whips, standard trees, which is something people always ask me about, is can we not have whips? They get damaged, they die very quickly, but standard trees of a good height, you know, that would be a great opportunity. So I'm really excited going forward, and congratulations for getting that bid in and winning it as well. Don't know if Charlotte or anybody's got any questions or comments at all?
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I know, just to really echo what Councillor Barrett said, thank you, Zoe, for all of your hard work on this. It's going to really make a difference in, as Councillor Barrett said, the community engagement, but the tree canopy cover is huge. So thank you so much for doing this.
I always get beaten to it. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for working on this project. It's really good, especially in the areas I'm looking at where they're all going. So yeah, brilliant impact. Thank you.
And just to say, I believe with the new planting sites, I think, just to reiterate, we are looking all across the city, so not just certain areas. We think it's really important that we do look all over the city, from Paulsgrove all the way down to the seafront. So we'll be looking at sites going forward to see where we can put it, where they will be, you know, surviving as well, because we want to make sure.
I think as well it's really important to add that those figures are based on what we can deliver as an authority, and that doesn't include what we can deliver with the community. So once the engagement person's in post and we start looking at personal spaces and street planting and garden planting and creating those nature corridors, I think the impact could be huge and the numbers will be hopefully a lot higher. So next time we come back to report, hopefully we'll have much bigger numbers.
Brilliant, thank you. And I look forward to seeing who comes forward for those roles as well. So I think we've got some excellent people in the city who could do these roles. So I hope they're paying attention. I hope they do come forward to try and fill them, because a lot of these roles are really important pushing forward. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what comes from that. So thank you very much. So I note your report. Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to number 5. So I'm assuming, Christina, I'll pass you over to you in regards to the climate event.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Barrett. So this is the first of 2 information reports I'm bringing to this portfolio today. The first one is regarding 2 events that we organised during this year's International Conference of the Parties. These are obviously climate change related events, so we just wanted to tie it into that sort of timeline going on at the moment. So these are all sort of, at the time, we hadn't had these events yet, so this is sort of written as we haven't had them, so there isn't a lot of detail here yet, but we'll write them up in more detail afterwards. So the first event, which was on November the 16th, was based around schools. So we held that here in the chamber. and I facilitated an event which revolved around some free climate change software from an organisation called Sea Roads. And essentially, we sort of negotiated as different country groups from around the world, and we negotiated different climate change factors, such as when their peak emissions are, how much effort they put into deforestation or afforestation, and then we highlighted on the model, which we had up on the screen there, how close we got to reaching a 1.5 degree temperature increase by the year 2100. So we invited Portsmouth high schools along. We also had some spaces free, so we invited students from the university as well as council officers here, Portsmouth City Council officers, and some councillors came along as well. I think it was very successful. It was the first time this sort of game has been held in Portsmouth before. Not many times it's been held in the UK. So it'll be internationally logged on their website, so we can see that we've held it here before. And the results of which was what we managed to reach a 2-degree increase, which wasn't bad considering the negotiation we had to do. And that is in line with the Paris Agreement anyway. So yeah, it was a really successful event, I think. And at the end of it, we sort of all put our climate pledges at the end. And we have a nice selection of pledges we did on a sort of personal level as well. So next time we'll write a bit of more of a workup on that of who came and what was happened and everything. So I'll have a bit more detail for you about that. The second event, which was on the 18th, we called a Green Partnership event, where we brought organisations who are the large employers, have a large estate, or have a particular large influence potentially on carbon emissions in the city. So we invited them, and we all talked about what we are doing to reduce our carbon emissions as organisations. Hopefully it was a good networking event, and at the end of it we developed and we signed on to a Green Partnership Charter as well, which detailed pledges of what we will do within our organisations to reduce our carbon, but also what we will do in the city to support this charter as well. So I think that was a really successful event. I think probably about 35 people came about that. I'm not sure how many organisations, maybe 11, 12, something like that. Hopefully it was really successful, and those who came enjoyed it. So this all builds upon what we're doing with the new climate change strategy, which was obviously approved in September this year, and it just builds upon our sort of revitalised focus on engagement and partnerships in the city, which have been highlighted as one of our strategic priorities area of how we want to work in the city from here on. Yeah, I think that's it. So we'll do a more in-depth write-up next time we meet in this portfolio, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. And thank you for organising both events, Christina. They were both really good. It's very interesting sitting and watching some of the children, teenagers, and the adults negotiate. We have one of our officers here who I'm now quite scared of, who is negotiating on behalf of what country is where you're negotiating on behalf?
I was developing A, so China, developing countries, yeah.
She fought very hard for them. She's very scary, so I won't be crossing you anytime soon. No, but I think it was a really good exercise, especially to be one of the first in the UK to do it. I would really like to see it come back next year and following years going forward, and to get more people involved with as well. And it was great to see the kids really having to think about it, and afterwards they were saying to me that they didn't really think about any other countries, sort of the developing countries going forward. It was just sort of thinking about what they were doing and what we were doing in the UK. One of the guys in the group I was watching decided to be Russia, so she threw a whole thing into our group anyway, so that caused chaos anyway. But it was just really interesting, and it really gave food for thought for everybody who was here. And it was a bit hairy towards the end. We weren't sure whether we were going to make it, were we? But we did just about. But equally, hopefully, it showed everybody what was going on with COP27, how difficult it is, and how everyone's got their own agenda as well. So I just wanted to thank everyone who was involved with that, because it was really interesting. In regards to the second event, the Green Charter event, I just firstly wanted to thank both of you guys, Charlotte and Russell, for coming along. I hope you found it interesting and were able to network a bit as well. But I thought it was really important, especially having the big businesses come along, because we've had business talks before, haven't we, with the large employers and anchor institutes in the city. I think this was just the next step going forward, so that we're all signed up together. Now we can share ideas even further and continue to build on that, so I don't want to let it stagnate. I think it's really important that we talk to each other, especially with the NHS and QA Hospital. We're able to talk a bit more with them, because their plans in regards to climate are developing now, aren't they? They're pushing forward, so we've got the opportunity to start working with them a bit more than we were able to before. So yeah, just thank you to everyone who turned up with that, and hopefully it was useful, and we will push forward with it. Any questions or comments at all? No? No, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and once again, Christina, thank you so much for organising them. I think it's definitely something we carry forward with the next COP28 next year, as we push forward. So yeah, thank you. And in that case, I will move on to the I've noted that report. And lastly, we will move on to number 6, the Big Portsmouth Survey.
Hello again, everyone. Okay, so I am going to show you the appendix that follows the report for this that I'm bringing. So this is another information report. Firstly, I want to apologise to Charlotte and Russell, because I know you haven't had much time to look at this at all. We had a bit of, I know there was some time restrictions on when we could publish this and when we couldn't. So we're very limited. So I appreciate you haven't had much time to reflect on this. So I thought we could just look at it together. What's over here? So this is part of the Big Portsmouth Survey, which was a resident survey that went out from August to October this year. So I just want to caveat the results that are here, because I think they only had about 2,000 respondents. So this isn't really, it's not, it could have been bigger, really. So take what you want from this. I think it's a good indication, but yeah. So there was loads and loads of questions. It wasn't just about climate change, but I managed to get 6 or 7 climate change questions here, which I thought was really interesting, because I don't believe we've ever had climate change questions going out before. So it's not the most in-depth questions. I only got 6 light questions in there, and ultimately I'd like to follow up with more research about what's going on, what people think, and what barriers they have. But I think this is a good starting point that we can use to develop more communications and start prioritising what we're doing as well. So the first question is, how concerned are you about climate change? And we can see that it's broken down by the age of the respondent, the sex, the household income and ethnicity as well. But really, I think we should just focus on the one in the blocked out, showing 51% are very concerned, and the following 33% are fairly concerned about climate change as well, which I don't want to use the word is good, but is really good for us, so that we can start pushing forward things. It obviously shows that there's really good awareness and engagement and support here in Portsmouth, which doesn't surprise me. And I think this is something that we can use to sort of readjust our ambitions and prioritisation of work here, and increase our communications as well. I think there's potentially more opportunities to focus some engagements on lower income households, potentially, and older residents, as there seems to be a sort of a potentially reduced concern there. So that might be around communications and engagement there. But I think there's some really good synergies in the work we do with fuel poverty and health and well-being that we can sort of use the same messaging there, because at the moment they're, climate change and fuel poverty are very related. All right, I'll try and move on to the next slide. There we go. So this is the second question. So how much do you think climate change is currently affecting Portsmouth? And again, if we just look at the blocked out response there, that's 34% are saying a great deal already, and another 48% saying to some extent. So again, I think there's some really positive communications that have happened, that people are aware of what the impacts are and they're recognising what's happening in Portsmouth, which might not be just our communications, that could be national communications as well, but I think people are really switched on what's going on around them, which is really good for the work we need to do. I think possibly there's still work we can do here though around, looking at schools and education as well, and there's still the same ties with sort of potentially in low income households and older generations as well, having sort of seeing there's not much benefit or not at all effect. So I think there's probably a bit more sort of targeted awareness raising we can make there. Moving on to the third question. So before today, how much, if anything, did you know about the net zero commitment? So looking at the average answer at the top, so 16% said a lot, 39% said fair amount, which I think is generally is a bit less than, sort of general awareness of climate change in Portsmouth and sort of internationally as well. But it's still showing that there's a decent amount who do know about net zero, but I think there's a lot more we can do there, because there's a higher increase of frequency of, knowing hardly anything and hadn't heard about it at all. So I think although people are aware of climate change as a concept, maybe there is less awareness around net zero from us as a council, as a city, maybe nationally as well. So that means we can start targeting more communications around that. And also really sort of get into schools and education providers potentially as well. Which one's this one? Okay, so this was a multi-choice answer, so you could answer as many boxes as you want. So Portsmouth City Council is looking at ways it can tackle climate change and reduce carbon. So which areas do you think that we should be focusing on the most? And it looks like they're different numbers on the graph a little bit, but they tied with the most frequent answers were consumption and waste and travel and transport as well, which I was expecting travel and transport, but I think consumption and waste was as a highest one there is maybe a surprise. But what's really, really interesting there is the sort of the analysis on the side around age that said 80% of 25 to 35-year-olds think we should be focusing on reducing carbon in travel and transport, which I think is absolutely interesting, and we can be using that. So I think this is evidence that we can start internally engaging with our departments, particularly around in the waste department, but also our travel teams as well. And we can use these to sort of prioritise where we're working in our future action plans, so what new actions we'll come up with to start tackling climate change. And also we need to recognise that Portsmouth City Council are a major purchaser here as well, so we have enormous influence in our supply chains around consumption and waste as well, so we have, significant influence here. Okay. Do you think Portsmouth City Council is currently doing enough to address climate change? So across the sample, 46% said we need to do much more, and 25% said we're doing the right amount. But there's also a significant amount, that 21% they're saying they don't really know and potentially need more information, which is great for us. We can target our comms around. And obviously the 46% need to do much more is also really important as well. And that might be tied to the not knowing enough as well, that we need to increase our communications about what we're actually doing. But take it on the chin, and we do need to do much more, so we will use that as evidence to start prioritising what we can do here. I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone, but Barrett, what prevents you, if anything, from improving the energy efficiency in your home? And this is really highlighting what we already know here, that there are significant financial barriers to most households. Yeah, like I said, I don't think that's any surprise to anyone, but we have got a really good, obviously, as Andrew Waggett has presented earlier, we have excellent comms teams, and we're doing so much in this area. And we're also working to sort of work with BEIS and lobby central government about widening the criteria so that more people can access these funds. Because people are clearly wanting that here, but they are inhibited by the upfront cost of these actions. I think we're on to the last one. And before we look at it, I'd like to caveat the small sample size here. This is probably most surprising, and I don't know, I don't even know if I half believe it. I think it might be more related to the small sample size. But surprisingly, for 58% of the respondents said they hadn't heard of Switched On Portsmouth. But considering the outreach you have in the city, I don't know, we'll take it with a pinch of salt. But I think there's definitely work we can do here, potentially reevaluating our communication strategy around it, make sure we're reaching as wide a population as possible. And there's always more work, always more communications we can do here. So the second pie graph to the, or was it donut graph, my apologies, to the right. So those were the people who haven't contacted Switched On Portsmouth before about why they haven't done it. Most didn't think they were eligible. Some didn't think they haven't got round to it yet. So I don't know, there's probably something we can do there. And, oh yeah, there were some other reasons which we can dig into, but we haven't got that data yet. So those were all the questions. There you go. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Before I jump in, I'll let both Charlotte and Russell, if you've got anything to say at the moment, and apologies for the lateness of the report, but hopefully that was a little bit helpful anyway. But I don't know if you've got any questions or comments at the moment at all.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Thank you for Christina for presenting this and going through it, and squeezing in those questions, because having the evidence base is so critical, isn't it, to try and get the prioritisation that we need from within the council and the buy-in from inside the council. I guess in some ways, although some of the data is a bit disappointing in terms of, lower income households not having the same awareness or maybe the same passion around, fighting climate change. And also, I think in particular, it's quite worrying about ethnic minority groups as well. But I think rather than seeing it as a negative, I think we see it as an opportunity, because particularly at the moment with the cost of living crisis and energy bills soaring, we can kind of put the two and two together. And even the point about a lot of people not knowing about Switched On Portsmouth, I think that's kind of an opportunity as well, because it clearly means there are people that are eligible in the city that just haven't been reached yet. And it's just about thinking, okay, these are the demographics of the city. What community outreach can we do? What other ways, maybe thinking outside of the box about our communications and outreach in Portsmouth that we can use. So just thank you and congratulations for being able to get these questions in the survey, and for having this really good data to move forward and to try and win some internal battles on prioritisation. Thank you.
Just before, sorry, I 100% agree with everything you've just said there. Although I was quite disappointed with some of the results that came through, in a way, I think it's a really good thing, because it shows exactly what we need to do, who we need to target, who we need to go speak to, and I love a bit of data anyway, so any data is good data to me. I did feel sorry for poor Andrew, especially after his report, because it's one thing that we have been pushing forward with the Switched On team is to go to any event that we can do, but also go out to the public. So I think you guys, you've been to one of the mosques, haven't you? And to go and do some engagement there to make sure that we're reaching out to a lot of different people.
Sorry, I know Councillor Stewart speak. I was just going to actually talk about the Switched On Portsmouth sort of learning that we've had, if that's appropriate here. We used some funding to actually do a little bit of market research, which ran up to I think the early part of the summer this year. And what we found a very similar message to what Christine, or what these questions within the surveys found. One of those things was the eligibility being a barrier to people applying, and what we've tried to do is tailor the message so that we're not just talking, or not just applying, I should say, but actually accessing the service. There are lots of different ways you can access the Switched On Portsmouth service, and a lot of those don't require any eligibility checks and balances whatsoever. So, going back to previous research that we did at the time of the domestic energy strategy, we looked at what the barriers were to people doing energy efficiency in their own homes. Clearly, upfront costs is one of those major things, and we're trying to mitigate that where we can, but we're conscious that there is a gap here for people who are not on the end of the scale that we were talking about earlier with the warmer homes criteria. But what we also found was that it wasn't just about the upfront costs, which is where our mind immediately went. It was also around things around trust and understanding of the products that were out there, and the technologies that were out there. So what we've tried to achieve on the Switched On Portsmouth website, and again, it's an iterative process. It's going through all the time. What we tried to achieve on that was to put loads of information, explainer videos, and all of these sorts of things on there as well, and tailor the message in terms of you do not have to be on the bare bones to apply for this stuff. Come and you will be surprised. Lots of these things are not about benefits checks. We see that. It's the first thing that's posted under every Facebook post, every Twitter post we ever put on is, oh, well, you've got to be on benefits for this. Not true. So we are putting that message out there insofar as possible. I would also say that yes, we are doing that outreach work, and I think the data element of that is really important. So we almost have two streams of the engagement plan that we do coming into a winter like this. We have the one which is the kind of customer facing, where we might be visiting a mosque, as Councillor Barrett says, or another place where lots of people are congregating at a particular time and a particular date, and we are there providing light bulbs and flyers and trinkets, just to try and attract people in to talk to us. Trinkets, and we're doing an event actually on the 2nd of December in the food bank at King's Church, which is exactly to try and promote that sort of idea. The second stream of that is the engagement with the frontline teams, whether internal to Portsmouth PCC or external. So. And I know this because I looked at the data yesterday. We've done field poverty training with 211 frontline workers already coming into this winter period, and we're continuing that right the way through to January, February as well. So we are trying to do that and trying to tailor that. But what we're doing better is we're trying to collect the data, the numbers of people who attend the events, the numbers of people who say they'll apply, the numbers of people who are given training and where they are from, and then track that golden thread of can we see those referrals play through to the LEAP program, or to the home visit program, to the free phone line, and ultimately into schemes like warmer homes as well. So we are trying to address it, but it is an endless battle, yeah.
Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, just to follow up on the congratulations. And I'm curious with the survey, because obviously I haven't seen all of the questions. Was there a question of what do you think climate change is? Because I find that many people have very different views on what they think it is, and some people that live by the sea might have a different view in comparison to people that don't live by the sea. For example, when we had lockdown and we had no cars, the Portsdown Hill was beautiful and clear, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is what happened if climate change if we didn't have cars." And so I'm just curious, when the surveys are taken, is the question of what do you think climate change actually is?
That's a very interesting question. Unfortunately, no, we didn't have. We only had space for 6 questions, so we just tried to tailor it as to be as specific as we can. But that's an interesting question, and I'm hoping that this is the first of many sort of more direct climate change engagement sort of mechanisms that we have. So I take that into consideration, and hopefully we can do that again and ask that question.
And Charlotte.
Just in terms of, if we'll, the things that Andrew's just explained in terms of the outreach, and if we know what the issues are, we want to try and make improvements so that more people are aware of the support they can access and to get more people interested. Are these questions going to be asked as they are again, so we can kind of track year on year the impact of the work that's being done?
In fact, yeah, I had the same thought this morning, I don't know if I'll have the same opportunity to be on that same survey again. They might open it up to, I think they like to swap around different focus areas, so I might not get the same opportunity to be on the same survey again. But that being said, I do want to have more of a climate change survey done in the next, I don't know, whenever I can muster it, but and I'd almost like to use the questions that we put out in the resident survey as more of a baseline. So potentially this would be a weak mechanism for seeing that because there are so few respondents, but I would like to see potentially change in those questions after we've done like much more targeted communications work. So yes, I would like to use it as a baseline if we can for, however strong that piece of evidence is. So yeah, I would like to do more work there and collecting more information because we're lacking the information as well. And that's really, really valuable to have that data and information.
I think to just echo on that as well, where we've got a new comms officer who's sort of really focusing on the greening issues, and I know Zoe and Christina have been working with her and she's very good. Now we have got that comms officer, we are able to do more going forward, so I would love to see, even if we can't get into the next big Portsmouth survey, if they are focusing on going on to a different department, I would like to see something like this going forward if we can, to just go out and ask people purely on climate and environmental issues, because we know it's something that people are really talking about at the moment, because it links up with the cost of living, it links up with health, so it is a really important thing. So I would like to see something going forward, and obviously using what Christina's put in there as a baseline, but also additional questions on top. So like what you've said about it, Russell, I think, something like that, because, a lot of people do talk to us on the doorsteps, and when they talk about climate, it's a different thing to different people. So it'd be interesting to see how people perceive it.
I think the reason, it might seem a little bit a silly question, but the reason is that then the follow-up questions will have potentially different answers. So, and I think it's really, really clear to just further educate to a certain degree, just in case people do think it's something else.
I agree. And I just wanted to, there were 2 points on there as well. The first one, I was slightly flummoxed by seeing that some people, 9% of people thought that we were doing too much. So, that's always nice to know, and perhaps, too much and we shouldn't be focusing on it. Well, I'm sorry to the 9% of people, but, we're going to carry on pushing forward with this. But I think it's also really important as well on one of the bar charts where it talked about sort of what people were focusing on. So there's the transport and the consumption and waste services at the top. I did notice that businesses was on there, and I think it's really important to note that although we can talk to businesses, we can do what we can as a council with what we're doing with our buildings and our services. I just think it's really important that we can't force businesses to do anything, but that's why the Green Charter event and pushing forward with these anchor institutions and our partners are really important, because although we can't force them to do anything, we can work with them. So I don't want people out there to think that we, by having that on there, that we can force businesses to do anything, but what we can do is work with them going forward. And that's not just the large businesses as well across the city. There are a lot of SMEs across the city, and it's with the low case work that we're doing as well, which Andrew's team have been working with other authorities across the Solent. That's another area that we can work on with them. So it's not just a big focus on large businesses, we can work with those small businesses going forward, and then by all coming together, it's going to make things much better for people. So I just thought it was really important sort of to mention that as well. But yeah, no, thank you for collating all of this and pulling it together. It was really interesting. But like everyone said, now we know what we need to work on, who we need to talk to, where we need to go to. So all data's good data, and I hope if anyone's watching this, if they haven't heard of Switched On Portsmouth, do go talk to them, because you just don't know what you could get. Like a lot of people do assume that it is benefits led. It's not. You could be eligible and not even realise, and you could end up with, especially with the climate we're in, better fuel bills going forward. I believe it's sort of a lot of households at £500 annual savings. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually tease that out in the report for the warmer homes, but the smallest measure, inverted commas, that we're doing is the solar panels. The saving from solar panels to most homes will be around about £500, around about 750 kilograms of CO2 as well in the first year of use.
Thank you. Yeah, so definitely, anything we could do. And of course, we talk about financial savings, which is really important in the current climate that we're in. But also the big thing that we're trying to do is the carbon savings as well. And I know you put it in your report, Andrew, so apologies for not speaking about it then. But is it 400 plus households worth of carbon saved through the measures? So, if we can build on that, then fantastic. But other than that, has anybody got any other questions or comments today at all? Or no? Well, in that case, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Obviously, this is the last one, so next one's in January. It feels a bit early to say this, but happy Christmas to people and happy New Year. We'll see you in the new year. Good luck, Andrew, with everything you do. We'll be watching without being stalkerish. So, but yeah, thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you in the new year.